The White House has been sending Vice President Kamala Harris out to make the case on coronavirus relief in the states of some key senators, including the state of West Virginia. Apparently, Senator Joe Manchin didn't really appreciate it. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I saw it. I couldn't believe it. No one called me. We're going to try to find a bipartisan pathway for it. I think we need to, but we need to work together. That's not a way of working together, what was done.
Sounds very angry. So here to discuss, president and founder of Solidarity Strategies, former senior advisor for the Sanders campaign and author of Tio Bernie himself, Chuck Rocha. And we've got White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics, Philip Wegman, two great friends of the show. It's good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. Chuck, let me start with you on this. This is an interesting thing because in one way, it's actually a strategy that Crystal and I have very much been a proponent of on the show, which is that if Joe Manchin is going to stand in the way of coronavirus relief, then you want to go to his own home state and basically lay out exactly what he's doing. But in this case, it was Vice President Kamala Harris, maybe not necessarily the one who has all the credibility in that state with Joe Manchin voters. And Joe Manchin has now come out of this swinging against the White House. Clearly, he doesn't feel the pressure. So what do you make of the dynamics here?
There's a lot of things to unpack here. The first thing is I'm happy to see this White House going up to West Virginia and saying this is the package that we want to put through. But there's a lot of West Virginians that are hurting a lot. The wealth in West Virginia is not really big compared to other states. They have over-indexed in the way that this coronavirus has impacted these working-class, blue-collar neighborhoods, or as me and Crystal would say, up in the hollers, people are hurting. And so if you go there, now, do you go there with Kamala Harris? Do you go there with somebody else? I would have recommended maybe a Bernie Sanders or somebody, but this is good. The one thing that I learned last year with the Democratic messaging and focus groups that I did specifically with Latinos, which in mind, there's not a lot of Latinos in West Virginia, but overall, when we said, give me one word about what you think about Democrats, they said weak. So I like when we show positions of strength. And if you got the White House, show your position, use your bully pulpit. Now let's go from West Virginia to other states to try to sell this. And to all you progressives out there who think that Joe Biden ain't going to be with you and he probably won't be with you on everything, at least he had the gumption to send Kamala, at least via a news outlet, to West Virginia to make their case.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of this, Philip? Because, the other piece of this, and everyone knows, not the biggest Kamala Harris fan, but it's a lot of arrogance and entitlement from Joe Manchin. She's the vice president of the United States. He doesn't own the state of West Virginia. She can give interviews wherever she thinks it's appropriate and necessary.
Yeah, and you would think that before she went to West Virginia, she would get her talking points straight. You had the vice president talking about reclaiming abandoned landmines in West Virginia. This COVID package might pass with Joe Manchin's support. Maybe in the end he gets bullied by Schumer, but it's not going to be because of the sartorial skills of Vice President Harris. I think that if Biden himself had gone to West Virginia, we would understand that. Biden is one of those Democrats who has blue collar bona fides. He's someone who can talk to working people. Clearly, in this instance, it doesn't seem that Harris can. And this was an ugly episode. If it shows that Harris is not going to be a secret weapon for passing legislation if you have to rely on blue senators from red states.
Yeah, I think you're right, Phil, which is that it's like the strategy may not have been bad, but, talking about abandoned landmines in West Virginia, probably not the best tactic, Chuck. And this comes down to messaging. Just talk about that, which is that, look, if you're going to send somebody to West Virginia and to talk to Joe Manchin supporters, 40 or something percent of whom who voted for Trump, then the blue state senator from California who's going to make, basically big political errors like this, probably not the best person to do so.
Look, we got a problem in West Virginia, and I'm just talking about with a bunch of my former friends who are from West Virginia. I'm talking about Joe Manchin. Now, Joe Manchin, and here's the key point for all of you folks who are going to be wringing your hands over Joe Manchin. You know me, I ain't going to lie to you, so let me tell you the truth. The truth is he's not up for re-election until 2024. It's going to be really, really hard to put any kind of pressure on him because if he does something he knows that maybe not everybody would agree with, he's got 4 more years before there's an election, and it's when we will be having another presidential election. So nobody's going to care about Joe Manchin's election then. This is part of the political ramifications of what I would be thinking of. I'd be thinking about these 2022 senators in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, in Georgia, in North Carolina. There's going to be a lot of pivotal races up in 2022 where the Republicans are going to need a lot of this Trump base to show up, and Democrats are going to need a lot of Democrats to show up who actually showed up for Joe Biden to actually win the Senate. And I think that's the point of pressure here.
Mm-hmm.
Philip, so, I mean, I think your point is well taken that not only did you get the messenger wrong here in terms of the White House strategy, and again, I think Manchin has a lot of arrogance here and entitlement and all of those things. But look, the White House strategy was obviously bungled. You have the wrong messenger, and then she goes ahead and bungles the message. What do you think their strategy was, though? Because they sent her out not only to West Virginia, but also to Arizona. Of course, Kirsten Sinema is the other right-wing Democrat who may, very well hold things up here. Why did they think that Kamala Harris would be the correct person to send on this particular mission?
Well, if we're going to have a conversation about arrogance and entitlement, it certainly seems that Joe Manchin is the one who might be owed that a little bit. I mean, he's the guy who actually won in West Virginia, not just his Senate race, but as governor. The people of West Virginia certainly seem to like him. I think that it does seem strange that you would send the vice president to a state where there, like we just, heard a second ago, there's not a lot of political pressure that can be exerted on Manchin. I think that, perhaps this shows that a lot of people in the Eisenhower office building are starting to believe what their allies in the media are telling them, which is not that Kamala Harris was a flawed candidate who dropped out before the Iowa primaries, but instead, maybe her staff are starting to read all of the profiles that came after she joined the ticket about how she's a phenomenal campaigner. And look, there's just no evidence of that. Just a lot of glossy magazine articles.
But Chuck, I do want to push back on this idea that you both have stated that Joe Manchin can't be pressured, because we saw him pressured. He gave this interview to the Washington Post where he said, absolutely not on $2,000 checks, and immediately started walking it back, had ads run against him by a progressive group, radio ads in his own state, and really reversed his position on that issue because it's so wildly popular. So he can actually be pressured because we've already seen it.
Well, I'd like to define pressure for you as an old football player from East Texas. You can block somebody and just kind of hang on to them and put a little pressure, or you can give them a forearm shiver and give them a lot of pressure. I think there's always some pressure that can be applied, but I don't think the forearm shiver is really there for somebody that's not up in 04. Could you move him some, Crystal? Absolutely, especially around, again, West Virginia has been horribly hit by this coronavirus, and there's a lot of homelessness and people going without food in West Virginia. And I do think Joe Manchin does care about his folks. And I remember back when he was a good Democrat, when he was a governor. I think that that's there at his core, and he may have other alternative motives that he wants to do up and beyond this race. Everybody should keep in mind. So I wouldn't say that he was not apt to any pressure. It's just how that pressure is applied.
Yeah, that's interesting.
All right, guys, stick with us. More with this team rising right after this.